Commerce signs 2 billion chips quantum hardware deals. Lead times for dilution refrigerators and cryogenic control chips just shortened for a handful of teams. The incentives let them book capacity at domestic suppliers ahead of foreign competitors. IBM now has to weigh whether to match this pace with its own foundry investments or risk seeing its quantum error correction timelines slip by a full year. Smaller European labs face the real squeeze as US equipment queues fill up through 2026. 3 SPACs raised $325 million in May 21 IPOs. SPAC sponsors just tested the market with 3 fresh vehicles on the same day. That clustering suggests they see a short window before tighter extension rules take effect later this summer. Target companies in enterprise software and hardware supply chains now have another set of bidders to play against strategic buyers. Expect term sheets to carry lighter dilution terms as a result. Watch how many of these actually close deals instead of returning capital by early next year. Hesai secures LiDAR deals with European OEMs. Production contracts like these turn sensor roadmaps into fixed delivery schedules starting 18 months out. Validation cycles for the modules begin this quarter, which compresses the window for any rival to insert its own hardware. Luminar must now decide whether to cut its European pricing or accept a smaller share of the Level 3 programs rolling out through 2026. Alternative suppliers will find design-in opportunities drying up once these architectures are frozen. The BOM cost impact hits OEM's 2027 filings. Meta, Broadcom launch $125 million UCLA chip hub. Research dollars at this scale usually stay in papers. Meta and Broadcom can convert results into internal tapeouts faster than any academic spinout. That speed forces TSMC to accelerate its own university partnerships or watch custom interconnect IP leak to competitors through the open hub. Design teams outside the Big Three gain a clearer path to sub-2 nanometer packaging by 2027. The first working silicon from this effort will appear in Meta's custom accelerators ahead of the center's 5-year mark. Bloom Energy shares jump 9% on Q1 results. Data center operators just gained another credible option for on-site generation that bypasses grid queues. Utilities in key markets now face a choice between speeding up interconnection approvals for fuel cells or watching more hyperscale load migrate to behind-the-meter solutions. Bloom's backlog will reveal on the next call if demand holds or fades after a few large deployments. The real test arrives when those units reach commercial operation dates next year. Pivot closes $40 million Series B round. Notion Capital's backing changes the pricing pressure in the enterprise workflow space faster than most term sheets suggest. Pivot can now offer 3-year deals at rates that force legacy vendors to defend their renewals with discounts they haven't budgeted for. Sales teams at those incumbents are already recalibrating quotas ahead of the next fiscal year. The first visible losses will show up in churn metrics by early 2026 as procurement teams prioritize multi-year savings over new feature rollouts. Socket secures $60 million Series C funding. The larger check changes the support burden once enterprise SLAs enter the picture. Socket can now staff dedicated account teams without touching product margins in the near term. Rivals still operating on thinner funding will either raise their own prices or watch renewal rates slip when buyers demand the same uptime guarantees. Those negotiations tend to surface first in regulated industries by mid-next year as contract reviews shift focus toward compliance overhead rather than feature checklists. Oshi vegan salmon startup nets $3 million from an established seafood distributor, gives Oshi immediate access to cold chain logistics that most plant-based startups still build from scratch. The crowdfunding add-on now lets early customers test products in home kitchens before wider retail placement. Traditional salmon suppliers will have to match that trial velocity or see their category share erode in Latin American supermarkets by the end of next year. Volume commitments from the lead investor already point to pilot programs in 3 major chains. Daretect raises $5 million AD seed for quantum sensors. Compact quantum sensors at this scale point toward defense and mining customers who need portable magnetic anomaly detection. The seed money covers the first production run that meets ruggedized specs those buyers require. Existing suppliers of classical magnetometers must now decide whether to license the underlying tech or accelerate their own miniaturization roadmaps within the next 18 months. Australian export controls will shape which markets see units first, starting with domestic resource projects before any international expansion. China launches humanoid robot workforce training. Government-backed training programs for humanoid robots prioritize factory floor integration over service sector pilots. That focus shortens the timeline for domestic suppliers to deliver units capable of handling existing conveyor tooling. Foreign robot makers now face a choice between joint ventures inside China or watching their market access shrink as local certification standards tighten. The first large-scale deployments are expected to alter labor planning at 3 major auto groups within 12 months, once factories finish adaptation training cycles. Semiconductor robotics equipment CAGR hits 19.5%. The pace of fab construction makes these modules non-negotiable sooner than most planners modeled. Intel locks in an edge on its Arizona and Ohio fabs by folding these handlers into the build now, rather than retrofitting later. Samsung faces the same decision point within 12 months, or it absorbs utilization losses that competitors avoid. The handful of firms with the transport patents convert that lead into sustained margin gains, while the rest of the supply chain absorbs higher costs. Benefit Bay startup brokers' $18 million funding round. Legacy brokers lose ground the moment employers see live plan comparisons inside a single dashboard. Health Equity and Benefit Focus must close their own automation gaps or watch renewal rates slide to faster systems. Carriers next absorb pressure as quoting cycles that used to take weeks now compress into days. Static data platforms lose their last advantage once real-time visibility becomes table stakes for every mid-market renewal. PowerGem secures growth investment and acquisition. The General Atlantic backing, plus the Telos buyout, gives PowerGem the scale to embed its models inside utility planning cycles. Grid operators now face pressure to standardize on one platform or maintain duplicate datasets that slow interconnection studies. Rivals in transmission software must decide whether to court their own strategic investors or risk losing RFPs to the combined stack. Lilly to acquire Orna Therapeutics for $2.4 billion. Lilly's move on Orna compresses timelines for rivals in circular RNA. Moderna must accelerate delivery partnerships or see its pipeline lag the new in-house option. Manufacturing expertise now outranks raw platform IP in deal value. Smaller biotechs face steeper odds attracting talent already heading to the larger players. Biogen acquires Apellis for $5.6 billion expansion. Biogen gains a ready-made rare disease sales force along with the Apellis assets. Competitors in complement inhibitors now confront a larger combined entity that can bundle therapies across indications. That scale advantage shows up first in payer negotiations where Biogen can trade discounts on one drug for coverage on another. Ebury raises £550 million with Santander stake increase. Santander now controls enough of Ebury to steer product priorities toward its existing corporate book in Europe and Latin America. Bundling will accelerate because the bank can approve credit lines internally without external partners. That creates a closed loop competitors cannot easily replicate. Mid-market firms get better FX pricing within 18 months, but this move pressures Revolut and Wise to either deepen their own bank ties or accept slower volume growth in those regions. Cashable closes £60 million Series C led by Goldman. Goldman stepping in as lead tells us payroll deduction loans now meet the risk standards that traditional consumer lenders have chased for years. Cashable can therefore scale offers to more companies at lower rates, pulling volume away from unsecured personal loan products. Gusto and similar HR platforms face direct pressure to integrate comparable lending features or lose user engagement to this capital-backed option within the next 18 months. Slash Financial hits unicorn with $100 million Series C. Investors priced this round assuming Slash already clears its cost of capital at current volumes. The market now treats profitability as table stakes for similar fintechs. That stance shifts diligence for any bank or payments company considering an acquisition in the space. Stripe must now either match the feature set that drove this valuation or prepare to lose reference customers who want the newer stack before their next platform update cycle. Create Music Group secures 450 million PE investment. Ares bringing this kind of private equity check means Create Music Group can move faster on catalog acquisitions than any label constrained by quarterly reporting cycles. Publishers without equivalent backing will see their best assets picked off first at multiples they cannot justify internally. The knock-on effect hits streaming services too, since higher acquisition costs eventually flow into royalty negotiations with the platforms over the next 2 contract cycles. Qnovo lands EV Series C with Hyundai backing. Hyundai's participation shows the automaker wants direct access to battery optimization software instead of relying solely on cell suppliers for every efficiency gain. Qnovo's tech now has a clear path into production vehicles, starting with upcoming platforms. Rival OEMs like GM must decide quickly whether to license comparable tools or accept slower iteration on range and charging performance in their 2027 lineups.